Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another episode of our Live with Leaders series. My name is Liam Halpin. I lead LinkedIn's Sales Solutions business for Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Latin America. It goes without saying that sales is going through its biggest test in living memory. Across Europe, we're hearing that the response to the immediate challenges have been really impressive. Businesses have executed the pivot to remote working with remarkable speed, and sales professionals are making previously unimagined adjustments with real fortitude and flexibility. However, this is just the beginning. The next phase involves us building a sustainable approach to selling that can work for sales organizations and their buyers over the months and years that we have to come. We've built new structures very quickly, but if we want these to endure, we really have to think about the foundations that support them. Every year here at LinkedIn, we conduct an in-depth global survey of sales professionals and buyers, which assesses the state of sales in different countries and regions. It's a survey effectively of those selling foundations. It reveals the enduring trends that have been reshaping B2B sales over the longer term, and then how these are intersecting with what's happened in the last few months with COVID-19. It also highlights the behavior and techniques that characterize top performing sellers, and namely those who are exceeding plan and hitting at least 125% of quota, and looking at how viable those sales tactics are, as well as looking at how aligned our sales strategies in Europe with the buyers that companies are targeting. We've just released the findings of the 2020 survey for Western Europe, which is built around interviews with 500 sales professionals and 500 buyers in UK, France, and Germany. And therefore, that represents the inputs of over 3,000 professionals in sellers and buyers. The core research was carried out at the beginning of 2020. And we've also now supplemented this with additional insights that show how sellers have started to build on those foundations. The key findings from the State of Sales report are fascinating. They provide us with a unique insight into how well-equipped sales organizations are for what lies ahead, what strengths they can leverage for the long term, and also importantly, what gaps need filling. I've got a great panel this morning, and we're going to have an opportunity to talk about those findings. We're going to focus on a number of things. I'm really looking forward to hearing the views of the panel. So I am joined today on the virtual couch, all the way from Belgium. We have Guy Klaas, the marketing director at Facilicom. Guy, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
From just outside London in the English countryside, we have my colleague Rebecca Schnaufer, Director of Sales for LinkedIn Sales Solutions for the UK and Ireland. Good morning, Becky, and great to see you. And also joining us all the way from Brazil and very early in his morning, we have my colleague Sergio Fontes, our Head of Customer Success for EMEA and LATAM for LinkedIn Sales Solutions. Sergio, you're very welcome, and thank you for getting
Good morning, everyone.
In the morning.
It's a pleasure.
So we're going to look at data in three areas, and this is going to be crucial in navigating the new landscape. First of all, how our sales teams want to be empowered and the type of support that they are telling us that they need. Secondly, what buyers say they want from a sales experience in B2B and how we can set ourselves up to deliver that type of value. And then lastly, what techniques and tactics can we dial up for acquiring new opportunities, for building relationships, and also strengthening pipeline. I'm going to look first at, how do we look after our sales teams and how do sales teams want to be empowered? And giving sales teams the support they need really should be at the top of all business leaders' agenda at the moment. In what for many are difficult times, we're all having to make adjustments. Normally we would all be in the same office on the same couch having this conversation, and we can often find ourselves thinking about this in a top-down way. But we need to decide how we operate, and therefore we need to operate in a way that supports our salespeople best. One of the interesting things about the state of sales is it gives us an insight into some of what the reps are saying. And a key theme that has come out consistently across the UK, France, and Germany, and also know it's reflected in some of the other reports we've done globally, is the importance of coaching. And that's what salespeople are telling us that they need from their companies. In the UK and Germany, roughly a third of the sales reps that responded to our survey, they say that coaching should be one of the top 2 activities in the time they spend with their manager. But only a quarter say that it is currently. So reps are looking for more support. It's also worth noting that in France, managers are making more time and spending more time than that with their reps. Also in the UK, top performing sellers are 48% more likely than other sellers to get the coaching support they want. So are you spending time equally with everybody on your team? And then also 4 out of 5 of the sales reps that responded to our survey said that they need help staying engaged when they're working remotely. So I'm going to go to the panel. We're going to talk a little bit about coaching. So Guy, I'm going to come to you first. Anything resonate in there for you vis-a-vis reps' requirements for coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you said, these are extraordinary times, and people are used to getting coaching in a more classical way, or at least being in the same room as their colleagues. Doing it on a virtual panel or in a virtual world, it's slightly more challenging and difficult. One of the things, and especially with new salespeople, I think that lacks now is the onboarding. I think it's more serious than, or at least what I'm trying to say is it's necessary to provide a good onboarding scheme. If a new sales enters the team and is left on her or his own, starting as a salesperson, then the chance of being successful is quite slim. But also with the sales team that is in place, we need to keep in touch at least once a week and show results of what they're doing. I think that's the most important thing in the coaching. Use the dashboards, use the reporting to coach and to show results. I think that's the key.
And then Becky, coming to you, what specific areas do you believe coaching should be focusing on? So reps are looking for more coaching. There's a real appetite there. What specific areas do you see your managers, and what advice would you give managers who are on this call to focus on? And then equally for people who are sales reps, what feedback they should be giving their manager as to what help they need?
Yeah, thank you, Liam. So kind of following on really from what Guy said. So coaching is there to unlock people's potential, to help them maximize their own performance and kind of help them learn rather than to teach or to tell them. Today's circumstances are quite strange. And so I think it's important that we lean into coaching even more, remembering that being remote doesn't stop us from coaching. And as Guy said, being remote actually means we need to coach even more than perhaps we would normally do so. So I think what I'm seeing a lot of today is my managers, my teams, peer-to-peer coaching. Coaching is kind of there to help remove chaos, okay? It's there to allow our teams to take a breath, to explore what they do next. We see coaching on deals, on difficult situations, difficult conversations, and actually as well, personal challenges, because, this isn't just about the work piece, this is about the whole person. And I think from a leadership perspective, it's about being ready to coach to the individual and what they need. So, for example, an experienced top performer, it can be giving them space to think deeper or think bigger. Or for a more inexperienced, it can be helping them to build confidence, to ask the tough questions, and really creating a safe space for them to learn and to grow. And I think in kind of answer to your question about what should sellers be asking of their managers, I actually think it's about the seller kind of coming to a manager and saying, this is an area that I would like to be coached on. It's something that I'm finding challenging, something that I need some help with, but also really leaning in to the coaching. as a coachee, you have a responsibility just as much as the person that is doing the coaching, so the coach. So it's kind of arriving ready to be coached and kind of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, knowing that the person that's going to coach you isn't going to give you all the answers, but they're going to help you find the answers.
And that's interesting, Becky, because I think one of the things that I've seen come about much more prevalent since we've been dealing with work from home is that coaching reps and how to have a work-life balance and a work-life harmony, whatever phrase you want, has become a skill in itself for managers, because in fact we're reaching into a situation where we're helping people think about how do you think about childcare, how do you think about home education in a lot of cases, and for people with young kids and young school-going kids there's been particular challenges. So managers need to get more comfortable with flexing on the topics that they would normally coach on. And then Sergio, coming to you, can you share any views you have on you've read the State of Sales report, and then bringing that together with your vast experience, are there any correlations that you can say, well, good coaching gives a good result, and those reps that managers have spent time with will perform better, which is what we've seen in the report. What's your view?
Okay, Liam. So in my experience in managing sales teams, I can see that managers that present better coaching skills typically present a higher number of reps achieving quota. And based on my observations, this is typically because of two factors. Number one, win rates, because coaching can make a huge difference here, as managers can leverage their previous experience to challenge reps on their strategies and tactics for individual opportunities. And secondly, in terms of pipeline coverage, because at the end of the day, and the stressful management of the quarter, it's very common that reps end up being focused on making their number for the current quarter, and sometimes not prioritizing enough, generating or maturing enough opportunities for the next quarter. So coaching is a very important here as well as an outside look to help the reps balance the focus between closing the current quarter and advancing the pipe for the next quarter.
So effectively, making sure that it's not just about the result, that you're coaching to the things that make people successful and helping the reps understand that better. Just the thing that I'm interested in, maybe Guy can come back to you on this, and Becky, interested to hear your perspective as well, that it appears that the high performers in organizations are getting more coaching from their managers than the people who are not the high performers. How what's your view on a manager spending more time with the people who are not performing well and helping them get closer to 100%, or indeed transforming those people into top performers? It is a trap that a lot of sales managers fall into, is that you spend most of your time with your high performers, and in many cases they're the people who don't need the most help from you. Guy, have you a view on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We used to fall in the same trap. I think as an organization, we learned from those experiences, because at the end of the day, you'll lose potentially good salespeople. It's not because they're not performing at the point in time that they can't be really good salespeople later on. So what we've done, we used reporting in Salesforce and in Sales Navigator to show us where the people are that really need coaching and help. And we use the high performers to serve as an ambassador, basically, and explain to them why they are successful. Sometimes in one-to-one sessions or with the help of their manager. But at the end of the day, it does really help. It's peers advice and coaching. And I think it's a bit of a no man left behind strategy. So you have to pull them all day long, every day throughout the year.
And that's it. Yeah, I think it's a good philosophy of leave nobody behind, but also then use your top performers to encourage people and show them the path. And the advantage for many of those high performers is that that will help them indeed advance their own career. Becky, what about you? Have you something to share on that?
Yeah, so I think the cross-pollination that Guy talked about is really important. So leaning on those people who are being successful, getting them to share their experiences, their strategies, their processes, I think is really helpful. You kind of like learn by example sort of thing. But from a coaching perspective, I think that it's really easy for us to stand here and say everybody needs to be coached. I think that in order to be able to make that shift where coaching is something that comes naturally to everybody, it starts at the top and it goes all the way through the organization. And I think what happens sometimes is you see this kind of break points at certain parts within an organization where there's an expectation that coaching is done by managers to reps, where actually we all need to be coached. And if every person in a hierarchy is being coached, then the learnings, the experiences, they're much more common. People, that kind of like that light bulb moment happens a lot sooner. And we've seen that an awful lot internally within LinkedIn, in that we operate within a kind of a top to bottom to top coaching environment, which I think is really supported. Another thing that we have done quite a bit of is peer-to-peer coaching. And I think what that reinforces with all of us really is that a coach isn't there to know the answer. A coach is there to help you find the answer, to help you work through a problem. And those sort of coaching circles, that peer-to-peer coaching, obviously there's a kind of a sharing of experiences. But again, it gives another coaching experience. It means that people have more opportunities to be coached or to coach themselves. And I think that, again, is very interesting. If you stand on the side of always being the coachee, you have a very different perspective of coaching, holistic perspective of coaching, than if you are on the side of the coach. And giving people the opportunity to be both sides of the coin, again, I think enhances the coaching journey, but also makes it a more successful one overall.
Okay. And then look, between the three of you, I'm not going to say who's got the most experience, but there's over 60 years of leadership and individual contributor experience. You guys must have had some fantastic coaches to be in the positions that you're in right now. Can you think of an example, great example that you could share of where you were that coachee at some point and you got some career changing or business changing coaching, and it still stands out to you today, and it's probably in your toolkit that you use to support your teams? Who wants to take that?
Maybe I'll give an example, Liam. It's a bit peculiar. It's not your standard coaching scene. We organized customer roundtables a couple of years ago, and one of the roundtables involved sales and sales experience for our customers. And basically what the customers did was give feedback on their experience dealing with Salesforce, with our salespeople. They showed us some examples of what they really liked about our approach and what they didn't want to experience in futures encounters. Also on our offers that we made, the way we write our offers, they gave some really good feedback on that. And sometimes the missing link between the salesperson and the people who wrote the offer. So they said, we really would like you more to engage and to listen to what we have to say. I think that's one of the best coaching sessions I've ever had in my life, because it comes from the customer and not from a coach. The customer is basically your best coach because his feedback or her feedback will be honest and direct.
Great, that's super. Sergio, Becky, anything to share?
Come on, Sergio. I can
But,
see you want to
yeah.
speak.
Yeah, but basically, I agree with you on both of these experiences. And what resonates to me is something that Becky says, that it's very important for you to create a coaching culture, because typically when people think about coaching, they think about directing. Some might have a philosophy of needing to coach someone who's a lower performer. Another person might have an underlying philosophy of coaching and trying to leverage the ones with more performance. But at the end of the day, what I have observed is that when you create a coaching environment in which you segment and define the different strategies for coaching on your team, depending on the specific needs, it also helps when you as a coachee as well. So if you receive that experience, you're much more able and entitled to apply this in a more segmented and intelligent way across your team, respecting the differences in experience of your team members.
Okay, great. So moving on, another key area highlighted in the State of Sales report is sales technology and tech skills. And before the pandemic hit, 42% of sellers in Europe expected to spend more time using sales tech. But this has varied significantly across the countries that we surveyed. Again, France were way out in front, 52% usage in France, 42% in the UK, and 33% in Germany. We also found that top sellers in all markets are more likely to use sales intelligence and CRM tools and rate them as being critical to performing their job and achieving success. And in Germany, sales intelligence tools are ranked the most important of all sales tech. And the proportion of survey respondents who is quoted as using Sales Navigator had increased 61% year on year. Also, the time that sales professionals in EMEA are spending learning about sales technology and Sales Navigator jumped from 41% in March to 54% in April. And actually, we've seen a large shift as all outside sales teams suddenly became inside sales teams on companies looking to enable their salespeople and empower them. On the other hand, 51% of sellers in Europe basically said they have too much sales technology and there's too many apps that they've got running. And and in the UK, 21% ranked that as the most serious challenge that they have. And then interestingly, when we look at key tech skills, our millennial sales reps, and millennials are no longer younger workers. The eldest millennials are now almost 40. And millennials make up about 50% of the workforce by the end of this year. And what we're seeing is that European millennials are lagging behind, 10% less likely to be using sales tech than their counterparts in the UK. So a couple of questions on that, and Becky, I might come to you first on this. Do European companies generally need to reevaluate their sales stack? We've spoken many times about the fact that in a lot of cases in Europe, we see an underinvestment in sales technology where it's no different to what it was 20 years ago. A rep is getting a mobile phone, a laptop, and CRM. But beyond CRM, there's not a lot of sales tech. What sort of guidance do you think sales teams need in particularly in this environment we're working in now, as to which tech to use? So it's not about enabling 700 apps, which there's 700 sales technology companies out there. Share some words on that.
Absolutely, and you're so right, Liam. The sales tech landscape is exploding, and the number of kind of new entrants with new technology is growing exponentially. So I think it's important to not kind of come at this with a knee-jerk reaction, and that's really easy to do because there are some amazing products out there, and you can start to go in a little bit like a sweet shop and just choose a load and throw them at your sales rep. So I think when you're looking at your sales stack, you need to think about a couple of things. Firstly, it needs to reflect your sales methodology and process. So, before you even start, what is your process and what sales methodology do you follow? Secondly, it's really important that you build it around your sales rep's workflow. If your sales rep's workflow goes in one direction and tools go in another, unless you want them to shift that workflow to adhere to the tool, should you really be bringing it into your business? And you've also got to think about it through the lens of intelligence. What intelligence can you add to support your reps? So Leonie talks about CRM system, but what you're starting to see now is this insertion of sales intelligence tools as well to complement what sits within the sort of foundational CRM. And then finally, you can't forget data. The architecture that you put in really should incorporate the ability to track all the activities that your team's doing and bring the data together so that you can start to analyze and drive performance to be more successful. And then I think, once you've done that, then you can start to look at the tools that help you tweak more the strategy or tweak more where you go in the future. So it really is an inward look first, in order to be able to really pick and choose with kind of, a foundational knowledge.
So absolutely making sure that any sales technology investment you make, you're leaning back and trying to understand where does this fit in our existing sales process or in the sales process that we're prepared to flex. And it's not just about buying software.
Absolutely. I think it's exactly the same process really that you would follow if you were looking at a new finance system, let's say, or if you were looking at what you were going to do with procurement. And I think we just need to be very cognizant that the sales process, the sales function is no different. Treat it with respect and hone it for your business and for your sellers.
That's such a good point. You wouldn't just go out and buy a new finance system and then let your finance team know, hey, by the way, we just got you a new system, knock yourself out and use it.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then Guy, coming to you, at the moment, what tools and skills are you as a company prioritizing right now, and why?
First of all, our approach was less is more. You can provide them with a range of all technology and apps, and people like new stuff, but it's hard enough to concentrate on the things they do have. First of all, I would like to say that the salespeople within Facilicom are spoiled because we built a new CRM through Salesforce, and they all got licenses with LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and basically those two are the tools that they have at their disposal, and we use them on a weekly basis in our meetings, in our one-to-one chats. We look at their results, but Becky touched two very important things. I think data is king, and the quality of your data has to be pristine. It has to be really, really good. Otherwise, people lose confidence. Salespeople are responsible for the data quality, putting it into the CRM. But on the other hand, we can provide them with tools like LinkedIn Sales Navigator to clean up data, to keep it on a daily basis, to keep it accurate. The other thing Becky said was the sales flow and the customer journey. You can't work the other way around. So in Sales Navigator, but also in Salesforce, we use that to build the system, and we stayed close to the off-the-shelf solution. And the last thing I want to say is that it's very important to make a difference between the front and the back end of data and of sales tools. Within Facilicom, we use our website as a lead generator. We got a marketing automation platform. That's all in the back end for marketing, but it provides good data sets for sales to hunt the lead, basically. and then they can put it into Sales Navigator. And when it becomes a marketing or a sales qualified lead, it becomes a follow-up in Salesforce. So I think stick to the things that people understand. Don't give them too much. Let them use tools and make sure the onboarding is done correctly, and follow up on their usage, follow up on the way they use those systems. And less is more.
And it's interesting, Guy, because what you said there as well is Becky had pointed out that don't just buy things and deploy them to your sales team. You need to integrate into your existing sales process, and then
Exactly.
You also touched on there that the tools that you're buying, they also work with each other. So your website is able to feed Salesforce and feed Sales Navigator and vice versa. So that integration in process, but also that the tools you invest in are also integrated themselves, so that you can automate and you can streamline and make it easier for everybody to use. Sergio, that brings me to you, because your teams are the people who make the magic happen. So what are you seeing in terms of barriers that exist for some organizations in leaning into deploying sales technology more ubiquitously?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Liam, because at the end of the day, I see many organizations, they just buy the technology, they just provide the initial training, and they think that that's it. There's a technology, you just dump the team with training, and then suddenly all the magic happens. And sometimes, or many times, it doesn't happen as initially planned if a company doesn't have a proper adoption strategy. Because sometimes, depending on how the tools are integrated to the process or not, it is very important to have a proper adoption strategy and an ongoing strategy in order to make sure that the users, the sales teams, are not only using, but extracting the most value out of the tools. Because at the end of the day, what the company wants is to extract a certain amount of value, a certain amount of return over investment on the tool. But if you don't have the users fully adopting that and using that to the extent that it was initially planned, those strategies or that business case is not realized. So perhaps one of the most important things in whatever tool that is selected is not only on the initial training and the initial onboarding, but also on an ongoing onboarding strategy to make sure that the organization is extracting the most out of the tool.
Okay, and the other thing that we touched on a little bit is that at LinkedIn, we saw a huge spike in appetite for online learning at the beginning of the COVID crisis, and we continue to see it going at pace today. So much so that Mike Derrison, who leads our LinkedIn Learning business globally, recently made the top 10 courses that salespeople were taking on LinkedIn Learning free for all of our members globally. So huge appetite amongst salespeople for online learning and improving their skills at this time. What advice do you have for managers who are on this call? Becky, I'll start with you on this one, as to how to support them on that journey, but also ensure they're focusing on what's important to the organization, and how you support them putting those new skills into practice.
Yeah. Okay. So I think both Guy and Sergio spoke about how it's important to make sure that people understand how tools work. So firstly, you have the kind of the training, which is how do you get to grips with this? What does it do? How can it help you? And then I think it's important to take a step back and work through with your teams the contextual aspect of the systems that they're using. So how do they fit in with everything else that's kind of going within the business? I think a lot of the time, with tools, with systems, we miss a step with our sellers, and we forget to talk about the why. Why is this important? Okay, and I think you start with the why and you build the bigger picture, and people understand the kind of the journey that we're on with those systems. It becomes much more live. It becomes much more easier to kind of to use and to understand. So I think that's the first thing. And then I think actually, how do we support our reps in getting up to speed? It is about the learning. Okay, it really is about the learning, and it's understanding and appreciating that different people learn in different ways, and tailoring the learning and the experiences that they may have to the individual. You know, for example, Liam, you may learn much better in a classroom type environment. I may learn much better, you know, reading things verbatim and going over and over. And I think, again, sometimes the mistake we make with our salespeople is thinking that everybody learns in the same way. And kind of making that learning journey very sort of static and kind of one-dimensional. So I think it's on us as leaders to appreciate that people learn in different ways, in different paces, and to really start to mix that up so that everybody has a positive learning experience. Everybody understands the frame within which we're working, you know, the why are we implementing these sales tools? How is it going to help the individual, the team, the business, the company? I think pulling all of that together really does help to get everybody leaning in, everybody really excited, and then basically making the tools as effective as they can be, which will obviously support the overall sort of business strategy and goals.
Great, thanks, Becky. And Guy, have you seen something similar at Facilicom, an appetite for learning more skills, flexing for remote working? What are you seeing in your market?
It's certainly a challenge, but I think it's really interesting what Becky pointed out about the difference between individuals. That's something as an organization you need to take into account, because if you think like a class group training is going to be the one best thing, then you probably lose 50% of the people you want to train. The things we've done is first of all, I talked about Salesforce. We implemented Salesforce at the beginning of the year, so COVID wasn't like a nice present. We had to change our adoption plan and make a realistic timeline. And I think overall, it's always necessary to make a realistic timeline in coaching people. And coaching is not something that goes from January till March. It goes on and on and on. It's a never-ending story, basically. And adoption that Sergio pointed out, I think adoption is something we need to take serious. So we tried coaching in one-to-one sessions, group training, online training. I think it's all of the above. And what we've done, and we're especially successful in, we set up webinars, and as a follow-up, we did a one-to-one virtual session with salespeople, and we also made tutorials. We found that tutorials for some people were really boring, and they didn't even bother visiting them. But other ones, they revisited the same tutorial like 4 or 5 times to be able to review something at their own leisure. It's like Becky said, if you're comfortable in reading and reading and rereading something, it's the same thing with a tutorial. Now we need to do things remotely. So we need to use the technology to provide those services and to provide those platforms.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think it also comes back to a point Sergio made earlier on about that the coaching needs to be individual to the needs of the individual. So as is a learning journey. So a great connection between those things. Coming to the third topic, and let's talk about, for all sales organizations, the most important people, and that is the buyer. And without a buyer, there's no sale, no matter how good your salesperson is. And investing deeply in customer relationships has become a much higher priority for all sales organizations, and particularly in a remote selling world, we're having to reimagine aspects of how we build and strengthen those relationships. Nobody's had a business there with a customer in the last 6 months in the majority of countries globally, as an example. So we've seen a couple of feedback points from buyers in our survey that portray for sales organizations. Are you really aligned with what buyers are looking for right now? So what we've seen is that trust is a big thing. Surprisingly, this wasn't as high as I expected it to be. 59% of sellers in Europe list trust as one of the top 2 factors helping them close deals. The proportion of buyers, however, describing salespeople as trustworthy has only grown to 6% in the last year. So there's a gap between how trusted salespeople believe they are versus what the buyers are giving us feedback on. There's also an Edelman Trust Barometer, which shows that trust in institutions in Europe, such as government, media, and business, is declining. So trust is a really important thing for buyers and sellers, but there seems to be a disparity between the numbers. 36% of buyers describe sales professionals as focused on long-term relationships, that the salespeople they engage with are focused on the long term, only 36. And active listening is the key thing that buyers are expecting from all sales professionals. And then the number of sales organizations who are hiring for active listening, it's actually being listed as a skill in a lot of job posts, and that's risen by 20%. Active listening as a quoted skill in a job posting by 20% in the UK and Germany. And in France, again, this trend here, France have been out in front in the State of Sales 2020 on a number of things. It is listed as the #1 skill in sales hiring now for the last 5 years. So we may have a lot to learn from our colleagues in France. Then among top sellers, return on investment is the key thing that they call out for closing deals, but also maintaining relationships and building trust. And that's focusing on customer value. If what you're selling to the customer elicits value, the customer comes back to get more value, and it becomes a virtuous cycle. So looking at a couple of questions in that space, and Guy, I'll come to you first on this. How is it that sales and marketing have been able to grow buyers' trust at a time when trust in society is not that high?
Well, I think I want to emphasize on 2 things. First of all, active listening. I think it is a skill, but it's one of the most important things in sales. A lot of salespeople sell the company's goals, and I mean, as their employer has a certain goal, salespeople go out and sell the company's goal. They don't sell the customer's needs. I think that's a big difference, and there's a big gap, especially in service delivery, or even in product delivery. That's something we need to take into account. Second of all, customer loyalty is highly underestimated, and I think retention is something that salespeople need to focus on as much as selling new business. Because once you get customer loyalty and the customer becomes an ambassador, it will become very valuable for the company to proceed. So I think as a salesperson, you need to be able to put yourself in your customer's shoes and feel their needs and their pain, and that what we talked about before, that needs a lot of coaching and help from the management as a whole. And also you need to rethink sales KPIs, because if all your KPIs are set on the company's goals, then you're in big trouble, I think.
And we mean by that also having KPIs that focus on on goals that the customer has or measures of value that the customer is getting. Is that what you mean?
Absolutely. And if you go, and pitch whatever you're selling, a product or a service, there needs to be a match. Otherwise, what are you going to talk about? If you're there and there's no match, then the customer will stop listening, and that's not what you want after 2 minutes. So you have to align yourself, and I think, again, if you're trying to sell a service or a product and you've taken the time to understand the customer's needs, and Sales Navigator for me is a really handy tool to understand the customer better. You need to invest time to understand customer needs and how to align your products and your services to what they want.
And I suppose you also, I've always believed that it's important to sell something that's going to work for the customer. Otherwise, they have a bad experience, and that damages the reputation of your company and also you as an individual professional. And also have the courage to be able to call a customer out and say, look, I don't believe that you're going to get value from this in the way that you're approaching it. And here's why, as opposed to just taking an order and then ending up with an unhappy customer. Becky, I might go to you then on, we've been building trust in different ways for many years, but we've also had what we now realize was a luxury. We didn't probably think about it as a luxury at the time, but we had the ability to go and visit customers and be in the same physical space as customers. That's not been possible for us for the last 6 months, and it's possibly not going to be possible for us for some time. So specifically, what challenges do you see when it comes to building trust in a virtual environment?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think it's important to understand that, we've all been thrown into this one at the deep end, okay? Nobody saw this coming. And so the last 6 months has just been a whirlwind of kind of, working out what works. I think the important thing, what I've seen within my teams for sure, is that people are really leaning more into that research, okay? So what this whole experience has done, I think, Liam, you touched on this earlier. It's really pushed organizations to lean into that digitization of processes, virtual selling. And I think it's led a lot more of our sellers to, those digital experience. So much more research into organizations before they first, touch a customer, so to speak. That face-to-face meeting, and I think I'm going back some now. Gone are the days when reps would walk into an office, sit down in front of their client, and go, "Tell me about your business." Today, the research is done before that first call, before that warm outreach rather than a cold outreach. It's very, very easy for reps to go to their customer's website, to download the annual report, to download the kind of the strategy document or the mission and vision of the company for the next year, 3 years, 5 years, and really get under the skin of their customers before they even make that call. And then what do they do? Well, again, we talk about cold outreach versus warm outreach. Well, then they look to how they can create a warm outreach. How do they connect with the customer that they are trying to sort of speak to? What's the best way to do that? Can they do it through an introduction? And then, like Guy said, they lead with value. Okay, and as long as I think that you're leading with the customer front and center and looking at how you add value to the customer, I think you can't go far wrong. So yes, I think it's been an interesting shift going from being able to sort of see people face to face to kind of moving to a remote setup, but actually I think it's making people hone their skills. You can't just rely on that, handshake and that kind of, eyeball situation. So you have to show up prepared. head. And I think that is making people lean into those sort of skills around researching and building out your narrative relevant to the customer much more.
Okay, thank you, Becky. And in this whole emphasis on relationship building is also influencing, and Guy, you touched on this about, not just measuring your sales results as something that, you assess, are you successful because you're hitting your plan? What we've seen is customer satisfaction and customer retention are now commonly used as sales performance metrics here in Europe. In the UK, the percentage of organizations who are measuring customer lifetime value and customer usage, again, you touched on this, Sergio, earlier, is also being part of some people's quota attainment. So it's about not just selling the product to your customer, but ensuring that it gets used. So Sergio, I'll come to you with this. Does the state of sales data align with your experience in your leadership roles? And have you put more emphasis on relationship metrics in recent years as opposed to just performance results?
That's a very interesting point, because if we look at organizations today, current KPIs, they tend to reflect the existing organizational silos. And if we think about sales quota is perhaps the utmost example of splitting broader targets into narrow individual opportunities. But if we look at individual customer journeys from a customer lifecycle standpoint, we typically see a very fragmented experiences, which are consequences of these organizational silos and underlying metrics. So the trend that I see to foster a more streamlined customer experience is to combine individual metrics with broader process metrics that reflect the entire journey. I'm already seeing this in sales organizations, in which sales reps are being measured not only by their quota, but also combining their variable with other metrics such as customer lifetime value or product usage or renewals or retention. So this is a definite trend as we tend to focus much more on the customer journey and a streamlined customer experience.
So measuring your reps not just on their sales result, but also the customer experience, and then importantly, how long you keep those customers for. So happy customers equals a better result. The other thing then, the question has come about are sales and marketing coming together to deliver the experiences that buyers want? And some of what we found in the State of Sales report was that 40% of buyers are saying they're more likely to take an introduction from a rep who represents a strong brand. And that therefore makes marketing a key support in terms of your driving your business. And then top performing salespeople have given us the feedback they're roughly twice as likely to describe the collaboration and cooperation that they get and the quality of their leads from marketing as excellent. On the other hand, 49% of buyers shared with us that they're experiencing different messages from sales and marketing at the same time from the same company. So they're just getting completely mixed messages simultaneously. And then the proportion of sellers describing a lot of overlap with marketing on targeting dropped 31% in the last year. So I suppose that brings a couple of questions, and Guy, as a marketing director, I'll come to you on this one. Even before the pandemic, it was clear that marketing has a vital role in helping top sellers. Do you think that role is more important in the last few months as we've experienced the pandemic?
I don't think it's become more important, but it always is. We talked about the quality of data, and obviously when you're not in the same room as your sales colleague, and you provide them with a couple of leads, and they're not of the highest or the best quality, there's no trust. And we talked about trust as well. My biggest challenge has always been marketing and sales alignment. You have to work together as a tandem, as a team. Saying the same thing towards your customer, that's always a challenge, because you can provide a data set, a template, slides. At the end of the day, it's your sales colleague who goes and presents whatever you put together. So I think prepping is very important, and keeping your finger on the pulse all the time. It's like using your tech. It's a never-ending story. It's a continuous process.
Great. And then, coming over to another area, one fascinating statistic out of the state of sales was that 30% of buyers are saying they're more likely to select a vendor recommended by somebody that they trust in their network. So another buyer. So Becky, I might come to you on this one. How would you recommend a sales organization maximizes their ability to influence their buyers, again through positive experiences, to be a source of recommendation passively or proactively within their network?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The recommendation piece is so important. And I think, Liam, you touched on it. You touched earlier, and Sergio did too. In that, it's really important when we are selling to our customers that we don't just stop at the sale. It's about making sure that the sale is the start, really, and then it's about making sure that the customers, supported during implementation, that they understand what material is available to them to support the rollout across the organization, that basically what they've bought works and is integrating into their organization well. Those sorts of strategies mean that the people that you are selling to, the buyers, become very comfortable using the product or the service that you're selling, and then become a recommender. At the end of the day, we all know what it's like. You go buy something, you know how to use it, it helps you out, it's really great. What do? You go talk to other people about it. In order for people to be recommenders of your product or service, they have to love it. So it really is about customer journey and setting your buyers up for success. If we sort of circle back round where we started with the salespeople, what do you do when you walk into the office of your customer? You need to get on the side of the customer. You need to understand, what are their pressures? What are their objectives? What are their challenges? What are they trying to solve for? How can you help them to do that? If you can do that, if you can create that with your buyer becomes your recommender. And when you're looking for those warm intros, when you're looking for people to talk about your product, they're happy to do it because it's helping them fix a problem that they've got.
Thank you. And panel, that's an hour that's flown by, and unfortunately we're not going to be able to get to audience questions, of which there are many. The one question I am going to answer from the audience is this session being recorded? Yes, it is. You will get a link afterwards with the state of sales report and a copy of the recording. So please feel free to share that with your colleagues or indeed with your network. And also this session will be available for replay on LinkedIn Live at the LinkedIn Sales Solutions company page. I want to thank Guy, Becky, and Sergio for joining me today. It's been a really good, insightful session. We always run out of time on these sessions, and it shows the appetite that's amongst our audience for this topic. So we will be back on in the coming weeks. So look out for that invite. I want to thank everyone for joining us from far and near, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you, and bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.